Today we talk about airbrushes. I'll share with you my experience with airbrushing since like maybe around 12 years now, and my experience with all the different airbrushes through the years. So let's skip the type of airbrushes. Basically, okay, let's talk about it. There's single action and double action. Single action is, I don't have a single action airbrush. A single action is if you pull the trigger, it will push air and paint at the same time. Double action, which is all of these airbrushes, is when you push it down, that's air, and you pull it backwards, that's paint. So that's double action. So push down, air, and pull backwards, that's paint. And then that's it. You have gravity fed, which is gravity fed is this one, and most of those airbrushes, the cup is on top and then the paints goes from the top. And then you have the siphon type, which is this one. You have a bottle here, or a cup, or a bottle, and then it siphons, like it sucks the paint upwards. So my quick recommendation, it's like generally easier to paint with the gravity fed airbrushes, and don't get the single action airbrushes. It's too basic in a way, and besides, the prices of double action airbrushes, unlike way back, is as cheap as single action. I'm not really sure, to be honest, if people sell single action these days, because again, airbrushes have become so much cheaper these days. So this cheap, less than $10 airbrushes, we have it here, and then these hobby made airbrushes are like around $40. So they're similar, very similar with the AK airbrushes, which are at the same price range, sort of. Then you have the higher middle range airbrushes. This one is a Badger 100 LG. I think I bought it for 7,000 pesos, so that's roughly around $150. And this one, Evolution, is roughly around the same price range, $150. So, and of course the Infinity, which is $300 or even more. So you have the $10, the $40 airbrushes, and the $150 airbrushes, and the $300 airbrushes. I used to have a couple of Tamiya airbrushes. I've sold them already, and also I had an Iwata. I also sold them. So it's not that I'm not, during the earlier years of like doing gunpla, you always follow what the Japanese uses, like they use Japanese paints, Japanese airbrushes. So because you want to be as good as them, you tend to get the same tools and the same paints. And so let's make it quick. What's the difference between all these airbrushes? The $10 airbrush, $150, and the $300 airbrush. Obviously, one of the obvious difference is the finish. The finish of the more expensive airbrush, at least the Infinity, is very good. This has been with me for more than a year now, and it's super smooth, super nice, and it doesn't fade. It hasn't faded so far. Then you have the middle range airbrush. This is a bad example, so because the finish is so bad already. But again, this is like maybe around 10 years old. And this one, the Evolution, is around 8 years old. So you see the differences in the finishing. This has the more expensive airbrush has a better finish, definitely, and the cheapest airbrush is not bad. So another difference is the weight. The cheaper airbrushes tend to be heavier, and the mid-range is, at least this model, about the same. Actually, this feels heavier, but once you have the bottle here, at the bottom, this is really heavy, and then the more expensive, the really expensive ones are lighter. So basically, while you're painting, you could just remove the end part once you've gotten used to the controls here, and it will make the airbrush lighter. So painting like 8-10 hours is kinda stressing to the hand if you're painting with a heavy airbrush. But if you just airbrush like maybe around an hour or two, it doesn't really matter. The biggest difference is the controls. So the more expensive airbrushes, in my opinion, have better controls. So this one, you push for air and then you pull for paint. This one has better, very sensitive control in terms of the air and the paint. So it has a way better control than the cheaper airbrushes. The cheaper ones tend to be really stiff, and the airflow control is a bit difficult. But with the more expensive airbrushes, even both the air control and the flow control, the paint flow and the airflow have really good controls. They're very sensitive. Now let's talk about the setup. The setup could be as simple as this one, a really small air compressor with the PSI, the pressure gauge, and then it doesn't even have a tank. You could also use like the really small ones used for painting makeup, and I also have obviously the heavy duty ones, which are really loud. The loud airbrushes, I love using them for really long hours, like long hours of painting, more than 8, 10, 12 hours of painting, and then especially for priming and varnishing. So with this one, the smaller compressors, you don't really get to control the PSI, the pressure, and it's silent, albeit it doesn't have an air tank, meaning you don't get like a constant pressure, a constant air pressure, but it's usable. I mean, I use this for late night painting because the big one is really noisy. So I use this for late night painting and it works. So it all depends on what you need and how much time you spend painting. Also, the water trap. If you've seen those tiny water traps that are put in between the hose and the airbrushes, so those are very helpful, especially if you have a short hose, because shorter hoses tend to build up condensation faster. So I'm not really sure, but it will spit water if you don't have enough water trap. This is not enough, to be honest. You have to have that small water trap in between the airbrush and the hose. But for my bigger setup, since it has a really long hose, the longer hose, I don't know the science behind it, but it will never condense enough water that will spit through the airbrush. So the longer the hose, the safer you'll be, especially if you're painting with lockers. You don't really want those water spitting setup, because it will ruin the paint job. You have to like repaint the whole thing. But for acrylics, you just need to blow that away and then use a hair dryer and then paint over it again once it's dry. So anyways, the longer the hose, the better it is in terms of preventing buildup of water. So lastly, for pressure, I don't really advocate the 10 psi stuff. I don't like it. Was made popular like 10 years ago. So but after like airbrushing a lot the past couple of years, I don't really advocate it, especially if you have a simpler setup which doesn't let you control the air pressure. You just need to learn the controls of your airbrush. So if you're detail painting 15-20-ish psi, you could do detail painting. The thinning is a bit different, but that deserves another video. So If you need control, you press less and you pull less and you do detail painting. So that's what the controls are for. So, and then if you want to do base colors, priming or varnishing, you could just pull more, or I mean push more and pull more. More paint will come out of the airbrush. So again, the thinning is different if you want to really paint away from the model, because you need more thinning sauce for that. A bit more thinning sauce or thinner, because if it's too far away, especially for acrylics, it will dry up even before it hits the model. So, but then again, in terms of air compressor or air pressure, you don't really need sophisticated or very complex air compressor. You just need to learn the controls of your airbrush. So my recommendation, I recommend for first time airbrushers to get a basic setup, a setup like around $50 to $100 that will have a good usable airbrush with a fairly good compressor that will give you hours of weekend painting. That'll be good enough for general use. But if you want more control, you should get the $150 airbrushes, or even if you could afford the Infinity, which is like $300, if you could afford it, and you want to get like a fairly big compressor with good pressure control and stuff, I would recommend if you get it. So basically, so similar with paints and then other tools, you get what you pay for. So the more you spend, the better finish you have, the better control, and it's more durable in a way, at least the finish. So that's it. I hope you like the video. It's getting a bit long. Do join the channel and be part of our community at Discord so that you could discuss this video and my other videos further. Or if you have many inquiries or you want to get into the hobby, painting whatever you want, join the channel, and I'm always online, and I'll talk to you at our Discord channel or our Discord community. So like, comment, subscribe, join the channel, visit my website, and saludos! Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my channel.